The history of North Korea is deeply intertwined with the broader history of the Korean Peninsula, which has been a cradle of ancient civilizations, a battleground for imperial ambitions, and, more recently, the stage for one of the world's most enduring political and ideological divides. From the prehistoric period to the modern-day rule of Kim Jong-un, Korea's history begins in prehistory, with evidence of early human habitation dating back hundreds of thousands of years. Archaeological discoveries, such as tools and pottery, point to the emergence of distinct cultures during the Neolithic and Bronze Ages. By around 2333 BCE, according to Korean mythology, the first Korean kingdom, Gojoseon, was founded by the legendary figure Dangun. While this date is symbolic, early state-like societies began to form in the northern parts of the peninsula, including areas now part of modern-day North Korea. Gojoseon's existence as a centralized state is better substantiated from the 4th century BCE, and it became a significant power in the region, engaging in trade and warfare with neighboring Chinese states. The kingdom's influence eventually waned, and it fell to the Han Dynasty of China in 108 BCE, leading to the establishment of Chinese commanderies in the northern part of the peninsula. These commanderies, particularly the Leilong Commandery near modern Pyongyang, introduced Chinese culture, technology, and political structures to the region, deeply influencing early Korean civilization. As Chinese control weakened, new Korean states emerged. The most prominent of these was Goguryeo, which became a major power in East Asia from the 1st century BCE to the 7th century CE. Goguryeo controlled much of what is now North Korea and extended into parts of modern China and South Korea. Known for its military prowess and cultural achievements, Goguryeo resisted invasions from China's Sui and Tang dynasties and built the foundations of a distinct Korean identity. Alongside Goguryeo, the kingdoms of Baekje and Silla developed in the southern regions of the peninsula, forming the Three Kingdoms period. This era was marked by both rivalry and cultural flourishing, with Buddhism introduced to Korea and monumental architectural projects undertaken. In 668 CE, the Silla Kingdom, allied with Tang China, unified most of the Korean peninsula, including much of modern North Korea, marking the start of the unified Silla period. This era saw the further spread of Buddhism, the growth of a centralized monarchy, and increased cultural exchanges with China and Japan. However, the northern territories formerly controlled by Goguryeo retained a distinct identity, eventually giving rise to the state of Balhae, 698 to 912 CE. Balhae, which occupied parts of northern Korea and Manchuria, was culturally and politically influenced by Goguryeo and played a significant role in regional trade and diplomacy. After the fall of Balhae, the Goryeo dynasty, 918 to 1392, unified the Korean peninsula once again. The dynasty's name later evolved into the modern term Korea. Goryeo is remembered for its sophisticated culture, including the invention of movable metal type and the production of the Tripitaka Koreana, a comprehensive collection of Buddhist scriptures. During this period, the northern regions of Korea, including present-day North Korea, were critical to the dynasty's defense and economy, with cities like Pyongyang serving as important administrative and cultural centers. The Joseon dynasty, 1392 to 1897, succeeded Goryeo and became Korea's longest-lasting dynasty. It established Confucianism as the state ideology, replacing Buddhism, and implemented far-reaching reforms in governance, education, and society. Under Joseon rule, the northern regions continued to play a vital role, particularly as a buffer zone against potential invasions from the Jurchens and later the Manchus. The dynasty also saw the flourishing of Korean culture, including the creation of Hangul, the Korean alphabet, in the 15th century. The late Joseon period, however, was marked by internal strife, corruption, and increasing pressure from foreign powers. In the 19th century, Korea's isolationist policies earned it the nickname the Hermit Kingdom. However, this isolation could not last, as Japan, China, and Western powers sought to expand their influence in East Asia. Following the First Sino-Japanese War, 1894 to 1895, and the Russo-Japanese War, 1904 to 1905, Japan established dominance over Korea, culminating in its annexation in 1910. Japanese colonial rule, 1910 to 1945, was a period of harsh repression, but also modernization. Railroads, factories, and infrastructure were built, but Korean culture was systematically suppressed, and many Koreans were subjected to forced labor and conscription. During this time, resistance movements emerged, both within Korea and among expatriate communities in China and Russia. Communist ideology began to gain traction among Korean intellectuals and activists, particularly in the northern regions, where Japanese exploitation of natural resources and labor was intense. Kim Il-sung, who would later become North Korea's first leader, joined anti-Japanese guerrilla movements in Manchuria during the 1930s and became a prominent figure in the Korean resistance. With Japan's defeat in World War II, Korea was liberated in 1945, but immediately divided into two occupation zones. The Soviet Union controlled the north, while the United States controlled the south. This division, initially intended to be temporary, hardened into a permanent split as Cold War tensions escalated. In 1948, two separate governments were established. The Democratic People's Republic of Korea, North Korea, in the north, led by Kim Il-sung, and the Republic of Korea, South Korea, in the south, led by Syngman Rhee. The division of Korea was deeply traumatic, as families were separated, and a centuries-old cultural unity was shattered. Kim Il-sung quickly consolidated power in North Korea, establishing a totalitarian regime based on communism and a personality cult. After land reforms and nationalizing industries, North Korea invaded South Korea in 1950, starting the Korean War. 1950 to 1953, the war ended in a stalemate, leaving the peninsula divided along the 38th parallel, now marked L by the Demilitarized Zone, DMZ. Post-war, North Korea focused on rebuilding through industrialization and adopted the ideology of Juche, self-reliance. With Soviet and Chinese aid, the country initially saw economic growth, but by the 1970s, the economy stagnated due to mismanagement, isolation, and reduced support from communist allies. Kim Il-sung's death in 1994 led to his son, Kim Jong-il, assuming power in the world's first communist hereditary succession. Under Kim Jong-il, North Korea faced severe hardships, including a devastating famine in the 1990s. The regime's emphasis on military development and nuclear weapons further isolated the country internationally. Kim Jong-il's death in 2011 brought his son, Kim Jong-un, to power. Kim Jong-un has continued the policies of his predecessors, but has also sought to modernize parts of the economy and engage in high-profile diplomacy. His meetings with South Korean and American leaders in 2018 and 2019 raised hopes for peace and denuclearization, but little concrete progress has been made. Today, North Korea remains one of the world's most secretive and isolated countries, ruled by a totalitarian regime that prioritizes its survival above all else. Despite international sanctions and widespread poverty, the government continues to pursue its nuclear ambitions, ensuring its place as a critical focus of global geopolitics.